I'm Guy Rigby. I'll be rowing across the Atlantic in December 2021, a distance of around 3,000 miles, which should take in the region of 60 days. I'm rowing with my friend and fellow rower David Murray.
I'm the other half of the entrepreneurship. We're rowing the Atlantic on December the 12th, rowing from La Gomera in the Canary Islands to Antigua in the Caribbean. We'll come back a different person. Will we be the same person? You just don't know.
How many hours on, how many hours off?
2 hours on, 2 hours on.
2 hours on, 2 hours off. You're not going to row at the same time at any point then?
I've spent most of my life sitting in an office behind a desk, pushing bits of paper around, advising entrepreneurs on how to grow businesses. In my 66th year, which was 2019, I just decided that something had to change, that I wanted to do something real and give something back. And so I thought about climbing mountains, couldn't do that. Thought about running 40 marathons back to back, couldn't do that either. And I thought, well, I can row. We hope to be recognised as and take the world record for the oldest pair ever to row any ocean. Now that's on a combined aged basis. So the current record is held by 2 ex-Marines, I think.
Yes.
Who
Paratroopers.
Paratroopers.
Yep.
Who had a combined age of 123. We will have a combined age of 124. So we're beating them by about a year.
The connection I have with Guy is Guy was my dad's best friend, and sadly
David's dad, oh God, we're both going to crack up. Was a great friend of mine. We sailed together, we skied together, we drank and ate together, lots. We had some fantastic times. So it was a really sad loss when he went.
Yep.
Gee whiz, how does that happen? We do talk about him a lot. It's a unifying factor. So really good from that point of view. And actually just like him, excuse me. So when I first met David, I thought, God, this is Richard. In fact, every now and again I call him Richard by mistake. I don't know whether he spots it. Anyway, that's all a bit emotional, but when David said he wanted to do this with me, I thought, well, he's just like Richard, and Richard and I got on like a house on fire. We never argued, we never had any problems. So I think that we've hopefully found the perfect duo. Mind you, he may not think that about me, of course.
When Guy told me he was going to row the Atlantic, I said I didn't want him to do it and that I'd divorce him if he did do it. He is doing it, and he hasn't divorced me yet, or I haven't divorced him yet.
Then we had this phone call really in about September 2019, it must have been, where somehow or another we got onto the subject, would David like to row across the Atlantic with me? And he said, well, can you do that? Is that a thing? And I said, well, Google it. And so he did, and came back very positively very shortly after.
I would remember it very distinctly. We were in the barn and I was upstairs in my office, and when you asked me, I was looking for something else to do, and I remember going downstairs and seeing Alison and said, after having looked at this sort of crazy film of rowing the Atlantic, and then took it downstairs, showed Alison and said, would you mind if I did this? And she went, well, if it makes you happy, Of course you can.
David didn't really just tell me, just said, what do you think of this? He didn't say, I'm going to row the Atlantic. He showed me the sort of the show reel for Atlantic campaigns, which was, you know, awe-inspiring. And then he said, this is what I want to do. And I thought, oh yeah, right, here we go again. And yeah, kind of madcap, but that's David, and there's no point me saying, I don't want you to do this. I just thought, yep, go for it.
You said you were looking for something else to do. Why is that?
I'd had a bit of an accident, and I'd managed to 3 weeks before, I was involved in a bike crash, and I broke the bone in my neck and felt I could never do an Ironman again, so anyway.
Nikki, my wife, wasn't at all keen that I did this row. She however, retracted, you know, her reservations. She knows how seriously we're taking it. She knows how seriously we're taking the safety aspects, etc. But the nearer we get to the row, the more selfish I feel, because we will never have been apart. I mean, we've been married for 44 years. 45th wedding anniversary will be hopefully when we're in Antigua. And we've never been apart for more than a week or two at a time. So I'm feeling a little bit guilty now. Probably have all the way through, but it's beginning to feel a bit more real now. The family is generally very supportive. Obviously, my wife, Nikki, is not particularly looking forward to being on her own for a couple of months, worrying about us probably most hours of the day.
I'm worried about sharks. I'm worried about the boat turning upside down. I'm obviously worried about swordfish after last year's experience, where one came through the bottom of the boat. But, you know, they've got lots of backup, and we just have to keep our fingers crossed and hope that they're safe. I mean, it's just as dangerous going up the M1, I'm sure.
So, I reckon that'd be near enough it for that side.
Should be. Should we try it once?
We'll just,
You want to do the edge?
I won't plane anything off it, we'll just see how it's sitting, yeah?
Okay.
There, that one.
Ah, let me in. Oh. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're trying to protect Lily, our boat, and us, more importantly, from a marlin strike. So in last year's race, 2020 race, 4 of the boats out of 20 got hit by marlins and holed by them. So we think the marlins are coming up because they think the boat is a bait ball, and they're coming up swishing their swords, as it were. And but before they realise it, they're just putting their sword through the boat. And so last year, one of the boats, latitude 35, with a chap called Jimmy Carroll sleeping in the cabin, found this 30-centimetre spike come up between his legs while he was asleep, which was pretty terrifying, because if it had been a foot or two higher, it would have gone straight through him. So we've been thinking about that, because this hull here is just probably half an inch or less thick, and you have absolutely no protection other than that. So what we decided to do was to put in a false floor to give us another layer, and Dave here has very kindly come over today so that we can actually fit it. So we're now putting in this piece of half-inch marine ply to sit on the spine and also go to the side of the deck. So when we lie on this, hopefully we've got the hull, we've got some air, and we might put a few more bits of marine ply underneath this to strengthen it up. And then we're going to Velcro this down very lightly, so that if a fish does come up and hit us, hopefully this will act as a crumple zone, and the whole thing will explode and we'll be tipped off rather than having a marlin spike going through us. Yeah, well, you have to be positive. Any entrepreneurial venture, you have to start feeling positive. There's always risk. We're taking every precaution. Safety is absolutely paramount. We're going to have to be unlucky not to come back, but it could happen. There's a risk, you know, I could leave here today and get knocked over by a bus in Marlow High Street. So, you know, you can't live your life in such a sheltered way. So, yeah, this is a little bit extreme. but we hope that the precautions we've taken will protect us.
We do expect to meet 2 or 3 storms. Most teams do each year. The waves can be the size of a house. Our boat is very well equipped to deal with those. That, to me, is not the issue. The big issue is that at what point do we take the call and we say, actually, we're not going to row this because we're not making headway, it's dangerous. We have 2 cabins, the bow and the stern cabin, and then we'll go one in each cabin and we'll just ride, we'll put the para anchor out and we'll just ride the storm through. And then the next day or the next week, however long the storm is. I think the last time a hurricane hit was in 2017. The reason we're leaving at the time of year that we are is the hurricane season should be finished by then. But that's not to say we won't hit some crazy weather. But I think we're both at safety first. Currently, for me, the training consists of between 6 and 10 hours a week. I try and put in running for nothing more than my mental health. I also purchased a Rannoch coastal boat, which I try and get out at least once a week. It's a scaled down version of an ocean boat, and that sort of gives you a lot more feel of how the water sort of can affect you. Bear in mind, I never rowed before Guy persuaded me to do this. So this was so I signed up to it without even having rowed a single blade or oar in the sea or water or anything.
We need water. We need water to drink. We need water to heat, to add to our dried food, which is our principal means of existence. So the boat has a water maker. It's called a Schenker 30. You see all these things I didn't know a year ago. And it will produce somewhere around 20 litres of water or 30 litres of water an hour, assuming, of course, it works. And we hope it will work. It's got a pump, which is electric, and a sort of hydraulic system to clean the water. I think it's a reverse osmosis procedure or something. But of course, to have a pump working, then we need battery power. And to have battery power, we need solar panels, and to make solar panels work, we need sun. So there is a kind of energy management requirement that we're going to have to go through. So we're going to have to pace ourselves very, very carefully. And I think the first week is going to be very, very telling, because when you leave the comfort of your own bed, go out into a very harsh environment, particularly around the Canaries, which tends to be very rough. Our biggest challenge, we think, in the first week is going to be keeping seasickness away. We're going to use just about every technique in the book to try to avoid seasickness, because if we avoid seasickness, it means we can eat and we can drink, and we can therefore rehydrate, and we can keep ourselves as physically fit as possible. Then, of course, you've got hands and bums, and seawater isn't very friendly when you're constantly exposed to it. So we do expect some pretty big blisters in rather unpleasant places that we need to manage and cope with. So that's going to be another big challenge. But so seasickness and, muscular fitness and hands and bums are probably the first week's challenges. If we can get through that, then it'll be plain rowing after that. I mean, going overboard and going overboard when unattached are 2 different things, right? So we might well be swept over the side and have to climb back in, but assuming we're attached, then with our harnesses and our safety lines, then that's fine. If we actually if one of us is not clipped on and we go overboard, then it's going to be very difficult to get back to them, because the Atlantic currents and winds tend to push you in one direction, and trying to turn the boat round on your own to collect someone. So at that point, there are kind of 3 actions. One is to do a mayday. Another is to hit the button on our beacon, which alerts Falmouth that we're in trouble, and hopefully would redirect cargo ships or tankers or anyone in the area towards us. And what's the third thing, David? Hit the DSC button on the... there's a button on our VHF that we can press, which sends out an alert and tells anyone who's listening what our position is.
I think it's safe to say also that you cannot swim as fast as the boat will be travelling. But I mean, this situation, whilst you train for it, should not be a situation we find ourselves into, because we follow the very simple rules that are laid down. Sharks they're there in the Atlantic. You hear stories of them bumping the boat. They bite oars. There is a theory that when you play reggae music, the sharks bite the rudder. Something to do with the beat of the reggae. Whether that's an old wives' tale or not, I don't know. But I thought
We're
that
not
was a
taking
great
any
story.
reggae.
I will be taking reggae with me. I love a bit of Bob Marley once in a while. So. I relate to the word unstoppable 100%. There's this. If you think you can, you think you can't.
You're right.
We've just got to do it, and we are unstoppable. I mean, the only thing that could stop us actually is a marlin, but I think we've covered that off quite nicely now with.
Yeah,
being able to fix it.
there are some threats though, aren't there?
Yeah, there are, but it's about minimising all those threats. And I think the process that we've gone through, the same way as you would do the process of setting up a business, the process that you go through is ticking off all the potential threats that you have to stop the business from growing and floundering. And the same process that we're using now is the same process that one would use to set up a business. You minimise the risk.
Yeah, so the challenge for me is how we're going to get all that in there and room for a person. That's the issue.
I know, it's going to be, really is going to be a very difficult juggling act, but I think we've got a little bit more space in the hole where all the ropes and
Yeah, I think
life raft is.
That's probably going to take things like seats, isn't it? I don't know.
A lot of this is squished down though. I mean, there's obviously some stuff that we definitely need.
Yeah, well, a lot of stuff we definitely need. In fact, the only area where I think we can compromise a bit is food somehow.
Yeah. I'd just like to introduce Mr. Duncan Roy, who's been working with us for 10 months, I think.
Yeah.
Must be, and he's our official ocean rowing coach.
Right.
Top man. He's how many have you done this year? 6.
Teams.
Yeah.
I've worked with 10 different teams,
Okay.
but in different capacities. But yeah, so
Awesome.
I'm working with 4/5 here whilst we're out here. But yeah, it's
How
been a
many
big
in this race?
10 altogether of different, like I said, different amounts. Some teams just a weekend with a little bit of extra support, and then other teams obviously the full support, and then others somewhere in between.
Plus, you also took the world record for the Pacific this year.
Yeah, that was right. Yeah, it's been a big year. Yeah, got delayed last year on the Pacific due to COVID, and then this year, went out. Everything went to plan, and managed to have a great crossing with a great team, really good set of lads, and that's what it's all about. So I've had my fair share of crossings that haven't gone to plan, but to have a row that everything just came together was great. Really, a really good experience.
Awesome. And you're helping this carb load tonight, aren't you?
Carb loaded.
Cheers.
Right. Cheers.
Well,
So here we have an inspection. This is our boat inspection. It's carried out by Ian and Roz. Can you see the red thing?
Mr. Murray, how are you doing?
Good. Very good.
Can you give us an update? What's happened? Oh, what was that?
We passed the inspection, so we're good to launch, which is an absolutely amazing, fantastic achievement and a brilliant team effort on the ground.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Roy, for your patience and all your hard work this morning.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. And what was the feedback from the safety team, from Ian and Roz?
Very good inspection.
They were really happy, weren't they?
Hi. Yeah. See you in a minute.
Okay, so here we are, just about to launch Lily. The huge crane is coming into position. Shortly she will be taken up off the cradle. Guy will then put the rudder in. Guy and David just about to touch the waters of the Atlantic Ocean for the first time in 2 years. that Lily has not been in these waters, and the rudder's just touching, and the rudder is now in the water. Lily has officially entered the Atlantic Ocean once again.
It's difficult really to express how one feels. I'm a little bit numb. I don't know what to expect. I'm not frightened or terrified. I'm not really terribly excited. It's a long journey to go. We just have to see how it goes, day at a time, hour at a time, and keep on going. This first week, we've got a few days of decent weather. I'm hoping that the seas will be relatively calm during that period, and I say relatively because the Atlantic is never completely calm. But I hope that we'll get a good chance to get our sea legs, and that when we do hit the bad weather, which is expected later in the week, that we'll be in a better position to cope with it, and hopefully we'll avoid seasickness.
How are you feeling about the journey ahead?
Well, it's very exciting. The whole idea of rowing 3,020 miles across the Atlantic is an amazing thought, really. People spend, 8 hours on an aeroplane traveling at 650 miles an hour to get there, and we're going to just row there. So that's a pretty amazing feat. Yeah, really looking forward to getting to the other side.
Have you forgotten anything?
Almost certainly. I have a dream that when I'm 50 miles out, I'll realise I've left my sunglasses on the table. But who knows? Hopefully not. Hopefully we've got everything we'll need.
To all that have helped us get to this place, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. That's the sponsors, that's the friends, that's the families. There's just so many to thank. We've got an amazing team back, with the PR side, the social media side. It's just been brilliant. We've had some fantastic support from our sponsors as well. Brilliant. It's been superb.
I'm definitely feeling more nervous than ever. I think I've been quite relaxed up to this point, and it's all just sinking in. The enormity of it. Even watching them go off today on the practice row is just like a dry run for tomorrow, as of course it is, but the thought that they wouldn't be coming back is a little bit daunting.
Yes, I'm worried about storms, I'm worried about the weather, but they're well equipped, so what will be will be.
Just slightly less. We're in the channel between. Here I am with David, who's going to say a few words to you about our day.
A few words.
Atlantic views on Thursday the 16th of December. As you can see, we have absolutely no wind whatsoever. We've just been through this south.
quite big weather at the moment, sort of 20-foot waves and things. So.
728 miles.
Some rest.
Here we are, arriving in Antigua. Antigua! Here the oars are ready to go. There's David, looking very beardy this morning.
Some highlights out there.
Well, the sheer expanse of the ocean and the sky. We saw some wildlife, not as much as we'd like. We had some incredible moments when we were tossing around on the top of large waves, out of control, things like that. But we got there. We just sort of stayed cool, worked together. David was amazing the whole way through, very supportive guy. He can run forever, I tell you. That's fantastic, that guy.
Coming into Antigua was just incredible. It was absolutely mind-blowing. I suppose it all began when we suddenly got the Coast Guard came out and saw us. There's nothing can prepare you whatever for that sort of homecoming. And I can still replay it in my mind's eye all the time, but coming in then we were sort of rowing really hard because we wanted to get in time for the kids and, you know, for 11s, and so, you know, we could spend the day with our family. So there was a real mission.
And suddenly we saw this dive boat with a whole bunch of divers on board. Well, actually they were in the water, but they all climbed out, got on the boat, dive boat came alongside and started cheering and clapping. Then we saw the Coast Guard coming out round the corner, and he blew his horn and waved, and fantastic to welcome us in. Then suddenly the whole ocean was alive with little dinghies, rubber dinghies, all overloaded with loads and loads of people coming out to welcome us. We also saw some dolphins just as we were going in, which was a very special moment.
And then one of the guys shouting, "Yay, keep going, keep going." And so I said to Guy, listen, because we were rowing 2 up, I said, Guy, we've got to keep in tune. We can't be shit. And so we rowed in perfectly. And then I still remember as we came through, keep going, keep going, keep going. And then boom, the cannon goes off from the top of the cliffs. And that was and then I was just thinking, I don't know what to do. Just, you know, because your body's so tuned to the row, to rowing constantly. And then it's like, oh. And I just remember just leaning back and just, Guy, brilliant. And it was just amazing. It really was. And I could hear, you know, the crowds on the fort.
David threw his hands in the air, and we let off our traditional flares, which was the most amazing experience, with a speedboat roaring round us, you know, taking city videos and all the rest of it. Fantastic.
What I've always done is I've imagined the finish, because that keeps you going. So this is, you know, 53 days in, but all the time on the dark days and dark nights, you imagine what it's like to cross that line. I would say times that by 10 to what you can think it was going to be like.
And then it was about half a mile, I guess, from there to the dock, and we drifted in, and the super yachts were moored on our left-hand side, and they blew off all their big horns. There were restaurants on the right, and they were playing "We Are the Champions" by Queen, and people dancing on the tables. Absolutely amazing. And suddenly we arrived on the dock, and there we were with like 200 people there to welcome us.
And then the noise was coming through. You could hear the shouting and screaming, and Alison was both, you know, doing the whistling, and it was just the most incredible experience.
It's amazing to see the family again, but you're a bit overwhelmed by the moment, because you've got the race organizer welcoming you in. There's a lot actually going on at that point, but I could see them all in the crowd, and they weren't allowed to come and say hello. They had to stand behind this barrier while we were welcomed in and went through the formalities of our arrival, and were told we'd been out there for 53 days, 3 hours and 42 minutes. Numbers that will remain with me for the rest of my life. And you know, it was just an incredible moment just to arrive. Amazingly, you can stand in a boat on completely flat water and feel completely secure, but the moment you actually set foot on dry land, you cannot stand up. It's the most extraordinary thing. So we got out the boat, and I tried to do a little dance to show that I'd arrived, and nearly fell over in the process.
You stagger, because you're on your sea legs, you're not on your land legs, and so you stagger. And I remember sort of, because we're segregated away from the family, and then suddenly you sort of get led through, because there's still customs and, you know, passport control, weirdly, that you've got to go through. You didn't even think about that. And then you walk along, and then suddenly I just remember seeing sort of Al and Archie, and just, wow. And just that first hug. And then you get given burger and chips, and the most incredible beer.
More welcome than anything was the beer that we were allowed or provided with, and the second one was just as good as the first.
And we sat down, and just with people, our family, I just cannot, again, it's really hard to process this and talk about it, because you can't convey the whole, there's no words in the English language can actually sort of do justice to how you're sort of, you know, the emotions that are coursing through your veins, of, you know, seeing your family again, seeing your, you know, just dry land, but also probably knowing that you don't need to row again.
So we didn't see a lot of wildlife when we were on the ocean. We saw a lot of seabirds of different types, and worked out that they must be living on seawater, because there was nothing else for them to drink out there. We saw one enormous pod of dolphins, which literally, we saw them coming in the distance. They went past the boat at 100 miles an hour and carried on. They didn't stop. We hoped they would have stopped and played. We heard quite a lot of whales. You could hear them blowing off at night, but we saw a mother and a calf, probably 50 yards from the boat one day, and we saw another whale of some sort, small whale, on another occasion.
No marlin strike, no marlin strike.
Thankfully, we got away without being hit by a marlin. There was only one boat in the fleet was attacked by a marlin in our race, whereas there were 4 in the previous year.
When I was cleaning the hull, that was interesting, because we always joked that the guy was on shark watch. And it was quite a big thing to go over. You were thinking, hang on, this is I think 5-7 kilometres to the seabed, and there are sharks in the water, and so you hop over, and then cleaning the hull used to take about half an hour. And again, another schoolboy error on my part was our first. So I bought an ice scraper, but we only had one. My first time over, I was cleaning the hull. The ice scraper broke, so we're having to improvise with a piece of chopping board that we used for cleaning hull, which obviously took a bit longer. So when it's nice and flat and calm, perfect. But quite often, especially as we were getting towards the finish, we were getting slowed down by the sort of head currents and the seaweed that was coming through. So keeping the hull clean was really important. So going over, I made sure the hull was absolutely clean, because it gave you an extra knot or two. So Guy was there holding on to the rope. I used to joke that he was going to let go. And so Guy was on the rope, I hopped over and then sort of cleaning. And the worst thing was there's a bit of a swell. The hull used to sort of raise by 2 or 3 foot. If you were underneath, it used to come crashing down. And it was quite a worry that, suddenly you were there and oof, you used to get sort of knocked around.
Well, ablutions actually, we obviously had a bucket. We did have a very nice large bucket that you could almost fall into with a very nice rubbery top. And to begin with, actually, I used to get it out, put it in the middle of the deck, holding on to the sides of the boat, the railings, the ropes, really, that were there. And David said, "What the hell are you doing?" He said that the throne is up at the bow. You can leave it in the corner there. You've got one rope here, you can hang onto a handle there, and you can survey the scene behind you. And that became a very pleasurable experience, actually. A stop for 5 minutes to sit on the throne at the front of the boat. And we worked out that if we pointed the boat a little bit downwind, so the wind was behind us, assuming there was wind, then the auto helm wouldn't fail. So you could sit there being blown along, literally, and the auto helm would keep you, roughly speaking, on the course you'd set. So that was very comfortable and good. But life aboard was amazingly busy. Amazingly busy. There was always something to do. You were either at night, all you wanted to do when you came off your shift was sleep. So you just literally had to take your clothes off, get in your sleeping bag, go to sleep. But all of that takes time. So you have your 2-hour break. We probably never slept for more than an hour and a half maximum, because you've got 10 minutes to get ready, 10 minutes to get yourself ready to come out again. Sometimes the clothes were wet, so that was an unpleasant experience. But nevertheless, that was the night times, and the night times rowing were amazing with the stars and all that sort of stuff. Bit scary to start with in the pitch black, but once you got used to it, it was an amazing experience.
It was really a bit hard to initially keep the food down, because you did feel, neither Guy or I were seasick, but you did feel, you did feel like you were you knew you were on the sea. You knew that had we not had our scopoderms on, probably we would have been seasick. So adjusting to the food for that amount of time was really difficult. I think I lost not a lot of weight. I think Guy lost a lot more than me. But again, my system to eating was very methodical. I knew from my past experiences as Ironman that fuel was the most important thing. Fuel was our diesel. That kept the engine going. And if you didn't feed it with the diesel, didn't feed it with the food, then you would suffer.
But it was amazing how little time there was and how quickly the days went by. No sooner it got light than it was going dark again. It was the most extraordinary experience, really. You'd have thought you'd be bored stiff, but it wasn't like that. But in the day, we played music. We had one of these little speaker things that you hang on the rail. We had lots of music. David had the better music, I hasten to add.
And the first storm was at night, and then suddenly you kind of hear this noise, and it gets louder and it's louder, and suddenly we were getting swamped with water, and so both Guy and I were worried. Oh my God, you know, when's this? You know, how much? Because you don't know how much worse it's going to get. So Guy sort of radioed into the shore team, spoke to Ian Couch, and Ian said, "Get on the oars, guys. This is free speed." So I thought, okay, fine. And I remember the first couple of hours, my first shift, first 2-hour shift, I was really worried. And then we swapped over, and then Guy took over, and then I came on the second one. And the more that we rode in the bigger storms, the more confident we became, and the more adjusted, because when you're rowing, like if it's normal or flat, it's like this. But in a storm, you're like this, and you're hanging on for dear life. And part of you is trying to ensure the boat stays in one, you know, in the direction it's meant to do. Because if it starts to go round, the hardest thing ever is that suddenly you become beam on to the bad weather. That's not good. But also trying to get back on course again is really difficult. So storms were a concern, an initial concern. But the more storms we went through, the more confident we became. And I can always remember putting the music on, big storm, big weather, fantastic, bring it on. And I just remember standing up and shouting my head off. Come on, is this all you've got? Come on, it's brilliant. And the adrenaline, and it was likened to skiing down a mogul field at night, especially because you didn't know where the waves were coming from, and you're getting pushed around and battered around. It was incredible.
We had a couple of big waves, both in the night. I would call them freak waves. The first one actually occurred for David. He was rowing along in perfectly reasonable weather, and suddenly a giant wave hit him from the side, which first of all knocked him off his seat and basically into the loo bucket, but it also broke the rollock, the gate as they're called on those boats, and it broke the sheave of the oar as well. So he was pretty beaten up by that, and pretty shocked by it.
There were two waves that I remember were extraordinary. The first one was fairly early on in the row, and rowing along, and then suddenly this wave just hit out of nowhere, and my oar got taken underneath the boat. And there's these the riggers, and there's these little rowlocks, little plastic rowlocks there. They're quite tough. And then I was holding on, and I could hear, and then bang! Huge noise as the rowlock exploded. Now, this was a really big concern because we had all of our, you know, the spare rowlocks and things like that. We were in the bow cabin. We were getting battered by 10 or 15 foot waves. We're going beam on. We only had one oar in place. So again, all right, get up, help. So he came out. So for the next 10 minutes, we were fighting the weather, trying to get the rowlock. We couldn't get the spare rowlock out of the bow cabin because water was coming in. So we said, right, okay, so we had our deck spanner. So the other thing is that a 13mm spanner is the most important spanner you have on the boat. We had 3. Okay, so first thing I did was lashed it on, tied a piece of string onto it, tied it round my wrist as well. So I knew that if I dropped it overboard, we still had enough to sort of change our 13mm spanner. So I was trying to lean over. So there's this nut there with the nylon sort of thread that you have to undo. So it's quite hard to do, especially as you're being thrown all around. Waves were crashing on top of you. So I managed to undo the nut, making sure I didn't drop that overboard. Pulled out the rowlock. We took the rowlock off. Guy's idea, great idea. We took the rowlock off from the forward station, the redundant station, and we put that on the. So we effectively swapped them over, and we got going again. But I think that was our first proper test of what it was like and how it could have gone wrong.
My freak wave also happened in the middle of the night, but it was absolutely the most joyous experience because I was rowing along in 2 or 3 foot waves, perfectly happy, and suddenly there was this explosion on the back of the boat, an absolute explosion. and water came past me on both sides, went over my head, dropped one bucket load in the boat as it went past. I watched the speedometer go from two knots to 8 knots very temporarily. And what I realized was that this giant wave had come along. It must have been a very steep bank wave, and we went straight through it. Or rather, it went straight through us and straight over our heads. Never happened before or since. Normally, you're very much fixed to the top of the water and you go up and down over the waves. So to get one going straight through you, almost like a tsunami. But it was fantastic. I remember David coming out and said, "What the hell was that?"
Smack to the back of the stern of our boat, and it created the perfect tube, and he was absolutely dry. But he said it was just like being in a silver tube going all the way through. Incredible. I mean, amazing. Thankfully, he was okay. But had that been, that was one of the rogue waves. But had that been on our, it had come from another direction, we would have been in serious trouble. That was a monster. Health on the boat was really important because we were the engines. So if at any point one of us was not well or couldn't row, that was going to be a big problem. By and large, I was fine. I had no issues health-wise, apart from when we first left La Gomera. I think I had COVID because I had this awful cough, which was fine. I've been involved in a bicycle accident and had a slight break to my neck, and that caused that was always background pain, but that was something that I've always managed. But by and large, I was absolutely fine.
I think the lack of sleep caused me to contract a migraine, which was, I don't know, it lasted about a day or two, I suppose. But there was one morning, I suppose about 4 o'clock in the morning, I got out of, I think I was on the 2 till 4 slot, so it would have been 2 o'clock in the morning. And I came out and David sort of shone the torch on me and saw my eyes that were going round and, whatever. He said, "Go back to bed." So I think he rode for hours and hours and hours that day just to give me a break, which was fantastic. Never happened the other way round. So, I was the weak link there, but luckily it was only for a short period of time.
Guy's migraine day, that was tough for him. He had a very, we pumped as many pills into him as we could. But every time he opened the door to come out on the oars, I looked at him and said, "No, don't. We're in no rush. We ain't gonna win this. Get your head down, get better." And that's the most important. But that's the important of a team event. That's making sure that our goals were aligned with each other. And I think we did that nicely. And I remember sort of rowing, quite a few. And fair play to Guy, every single time he opened the gate, "I'm coming out." "No, you're not, Guy. I'm having fun. You stay there, rest, recuperate. Tomorrow's another day."
The other thing I did was manage to fall on the rail, which is, it's a bit of webbing to stop you falling over the side, but I managed to fall on it, and I seriously damaged my ribs. And I was in quite a lot of pain for about a week or two while that sort of normalized. Ibuprofen on a regular basis, and just one of those things. Unfortunate. The biggest issue for me once I'd stopped rowing was that my fingers tightened up and I got this tendinitis, which I still carry with me today. But my hands were absolutely on fire, and nothing I did with ibuprofen or paracetamol or whatever could stop it. So I was in absolute agony with my hands, and that lasted about a month or so. When you're out on the ocean, there is absolutely nothing apart from the wildlife, which is limited. There is absolutely nothing. So when you actually do spot a ship, a boat, it's all quite exciting. And we probably saw less than 10 boats, ships of any description the entire way across. We didn't see a single aircraft. There is nothing out there. So when you see the tip of a sail coming over the horizon, it's all very exciting. And we were visited by 3 yachts, in fact, who found us because they could see us on their AIS and then tracked us down, basically. One was the organizer's yacht called Antigua, which came, and it was basically sailing through the fleet and taking pictures and all the rest of it. Some of the pictures on the ocean were taken by them. It was lovely to see them. They stopped and chatted and all the rest of it. You can't get off, you can't do anything apart from just chat to them, and they're not allowed to give you anything because that would make the race an assisted journey or all that sort of stuff.
And I just remember, as they went off, seeing the sail disappear over the horizon, and yeah, that was hard. That was a real sort of, and I think that was the last boat that we saw, bar for a good 3 or 4 weeks. That was the last, you know, so you're on your own again. Weird.
Then we had a super yacht called State of Grace that appeared over the horizon and sailed past us and stopped and took some pictures, and indeed emailed us those pictures at a later date. And then finally we saw a French boat that was on its way to Guadeloupe, and they sailed by, and we had a good chat with them while they were standing on the deck. Very exciting. I guess there's a question about what we learned about ourselves on the row. And I think I was always relatively confident. Funnily enough, I wasn't frightened of the sea before we went, and I thought I might be, but that never worried me. I guess I've mucked about on boats a lot in my life. But the mental side is the harder bit, and there are times, I mean, you cannot think about the fact that you've got 2,800 miles to go or something like that, and you're out there for another 6 weeks, 7 weeks, whatever it may be. That's an impossible thought. So before we went, we'd had a lovely guy, a therapist called Gareth Strangemore-Jones, who sort of coached us a little bit on the mental side and talked about mental resilience. And I took away from that some interesting things. And he said, you know, whenever things are down, positive thoughts, positive actions, positive interactions, positive purpose. And if I was able to lie in the cabin in my downtime and think about something positive, or think about what we were doing, or say a few words to David, or think about the charity that we were raising the money for, that made it all worthwhile. And I think what I learned about myself was that I had the capability of being resilient. And I think that's probably where some people would not be able to do this challenge, the mental side, because I think the physical side, providing you're reasonably fit. I was 68, so 68's not a young age. I trained as hard as I could, but the physical side's okay. The mental side is the challenge.
At the start, when Carsten comes up to you, so he's the last person you really see, and he looks at you, and I just remember his eyes drilling into mine. He shakes you by hand and says, "Good luck, guys. See you in Antigua." And so he says these things that you come back changed. And so, off you go. 53 days later, the first person you sort of really see and you engage with is Carsten. And I remember him, I just remember that look and he went, "You've changed." And 2 years in, reflecting back, I definitely have. If I could bottle that and I could give it to people and say, take this and try and experience what perhaps Guy and I experienced on this row, do it. Life's short. Get out there, do it. And some people don't have the opportunity or the chance. I get that, and I understand that. But if one person gets something from what Guy and I achieved and does that, then to me it's been worthwhile.
So for the purpose of the charity, I mean, I selected the charity because my day job for years and years had been helping entrepreneurs grow businesses, and There are lots of entrepreneurs that came to me and said, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that, but I haven't got any money. And I think, well, that's a shame, because they're nice people, etc. And so Unlimited, the charity, actually find, fund and support entrepreneurs who want to grow a business from scratch, but who don't have the means to do that, don't have access perhaps to the bank of mum and dad. But they have a twist, because they will only back businesses that have a social purpose. So social purpose means that they're doing good in some way or another in their communities.
I mean, I love Unlimited, I love what they do, and it was a huge motivation for us to be able to know that what we were doing, we're going to sort of help people who wouldn't necessarily have that opportunity to set up a business. You know, it's to find and fund these amazing entrepreneurs and just do amazing things that helps the community, helps our society to function better.
When we got back from the row, someone called me up and said, Guy, that was just the most amazing thing you guys have done. What's the legacy? Well, by now, of course, we'd sold the boat. We did that even before we left on the row. We'd sold it for delivery in Antigua, so we didn't have a boat anymore. And I thought, well, you know, that is absolutely so right. Why aren't we doing something? You know, we've created this brand, the entrepreneurship. We had a good following, raised a lot of money. So why wouldn't we continue it? So I got on to Unlimited, the charity, who were obviously pretty pleased about the funding that we'd raised at this point. And I said, look, I tell you what, why don't we buy another boat? Why don't you buy another boat? And I will run it for you for the next 5 years. We're now in 2023, and we've got the first legacy row coming up in December. Two guys, Sam Glover and Jake Chapman, will be rowing the new entrepreneurship. The boat's called Lucy because when Sam Glover, one of the rowers, came to our house and met my daughter, who has Down syndrome and is also called Lucy, we were trying to find a name for the boat, and he emailed me after he'd been, said it was an absolute delight to meet your daughter, and we would like you to call the boat Lucy if that's acceptable to the charity. So that's what we did.
The legacy that's been left behind, I'm heartened to see that Unlimited have decided to go for the next 5 years, and I think that's a testament to, again, Guy's tenacious appetite for the entrepreneurial space. And Lucy, having bought Lucy now, I think it's great the fact that there are other teams going out there, and it's, you know, I'll be watching with a very keen interest to see how they get on. And good luck to all future rowers for Unlimited. Great charity, raise as much as you can. That's the legacy. The best moments for me on the boat, crikey, there were so many. I think the best moment, one of the most special moments for me, was on the last night when we weren't rowing, and Guy and I had the time to sit there and enjoy a chat and a meal and a reflection together. That was a real big highlight. But I suppose the moment that trumps it all was we were probably 2/3 of the way in, and we got, because we had this sort of like WhatsApp group that came through, and Guy was rowing and I sort of was in the cabin, and suddenly we got, you know, oh, what's this? And we got probably about 200 messages from friends and family that came through, just saying, well done guys, keep going, missing you. Yeah, that was quite amazing. Would I row the Atlantic again? Yes. Would I row any ocean again? Yes. It was incredible. And, you know, time, money, all these things, factors that came into it. But if somebody offered me to go tomorrow, I'd be on that boat. 100%. No, 110%. Brilliant. If Guy asked me to do it again, 100%. I'd go with Guy again. I think we learned a lot. And Actually, between you and me and the cameras, he did sort of slightly mention that he probably wouldn't do the Atlantic again. Maybe I could talk him into doing the Pacific. Watch this space. So, Guy, what's it like having just done your first ever 2-hour night row?
It's been very nice, very pleasurable.
Yeah.
Had to stop and have a pee
Did you?
in the middle.
Fantastic. Probably the last time that I ever crossed an ocean, either in a rowboat or on a yacht or what, I just don't know. But it is something that just is so magical, so amazing, and something you don't get this on dry land. You know, you go across the Gobi Desert or go and climb Mount Everest, but it's not the same. This is something else.
See the dial, you can just hit 3 dots.
The guy's lying again. He lies about how many knots he does. So what's been the highlight?
Oh, well, I managed to use this.
Okay, that's a shit highlight.